real and what's not real about it. So I think that's important. Thank you very much. Okay.
Part two would be redispiriting.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. At the Committee of the Whole on August 25th, you discussed the possible repeal of the home rule sales tax, which was increased by 0.5%, effective July 1st. At that time, the council opted to keep the tax as it currently stands, but asked to discuss this again at the first meeting in March, so here we are. If I can put into context how this all came about, joggle some memories here. 15 months ago, it didn't seem like any other municipality or any other unit of government was facing these issues. It seemed like we were on an island all by ourselves. It seemed like DeKalb was the only one facing these issues. I'm sure you remember that very well. There was a lot of talk about financial management here by the city, but I think now that we can look back, we can see that the truth was, we were trying to forecast and we're trying to be proactive and be ahead of the curve through that. We found that expenditures, for the most part, were staying within budget. However, the revenues were not. Okay, sales tax, building permit revenue, and so forth were showing a major slowdown. This is back in '07. So our forecast showed that pensions and healthcare costs were actually going to outpace that growth in revenues, since there was a major slowdown in revenues. And we knew that we could not sustain this in the future. So essentially, the city had to act. Okay? Very much like how cities, today, state governments and other units of government had to act, the city acted. So back in December of 2007, the city auditor came out and said that the general fund had a $522,000 deficit for fiscal year '07. Came out again, and it showed that for fiscal year '08, we're also going to end in a deficit, which ended up to be about $400,000. So a plan was presented on March 4th, 2008. This is the special meeting that we had, where the plan encompassed reducing and reorganizing the city workforce. This is through attrition and pending retirements, and making major expenditure cuts. Now, those cuts entailed instituting a hiring freeze. To date, a total of 16 positions have not been filled. A 5-day furlough taken by management and ASME employees. A 10% cut across the board for all non-personnel expenditures. And discretionary travel and training and non-essential overtime was also cut. So with all these cuts that the city had to do, it's only then that the city council was willing to look at increasing revenues. And that revenue, of course, was the 0.5% increase in the city sales tax, the home rule sales tax. In normal conditions, that would bring in approximately $1.8 million. I think we all can agree that this is probably not normal conditions, given the economy. So, we're here today, and I know part of the reason why we want to discuss this in March is because we wanted to see how the holiday sales have come in. Okay. However, because the city has not obtained receipts for December of the home rule sales tax yet, we're not able to report that back to you. We will receive this disbursement sometime in mid-March. Okay, so in a couple of weeks. But in comparing total sales tax revenues from last year to this year, for the first 5 months of the new home rule sales tax, there looks to be a slight decrease of about 1%. Okay, so based on these trends, we're looking at the total sales tax is estimated to come in approximately $250,000 below budget. So this is the same projection that I gave at the second quarter financial report, about $250,000 below. Keep in mind as well that the Target retail store will be closed from April through October of '09, so that'll be less revenue for the general fund. I want to remind the council that if this tax is indeed repealed, the council would then have to immediately consider either service reductions or consider other revenue enhancements to make up that $1.8 million. And unless the city council is prepared to do that before April 1st, we would not recommend repealing the home rule sales tax. Or you can postpone making these decisions at this time and allow a full year's worth of receipts to be analyzed before taking further action. So that's the end of my report.
How many positions, if we were to rescind this, how many positions would we be talking about?
Approximately 18 to 20
So we'd have to lay off 18 to 20 of our
Yes.
fire and police and our street workers if
That
we
would be
were to
correct.
rescind this. Okay. Questions? Comments? Mr. Tarazinski?
Just a comment, I know this is a discussion that started early on and came up again during the discussions of the property tax increases in the late fall. It was a concern at that time, I think, that we may end up short, and looking forward to the problems of revenues flattening out throughout the balance of the second half of this year and into next year. I think we'd be very hard-pressed to rescind this at this time. I know we're going to re-examine this revenue stream over the budget process. We'll have consultants' reports in the April-May timeframe, and I certainly would not support moving on this and rescinding this at this time. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Neal?
I would probably echo the same things as far as the rescinding of the sales tax at this time. I don't think there's been enough experience shown. Likewise with the economy the way it is, and particularly with our revenue flow as well, and the needs of the city to sustain the services that are out there. I think this was something that would probably be further reviewed during the budget time, and particularly after we get some information back from our financial consultants, start hearing back from some of their explorations and their research and their work that they are doing. And take a look at this again at budget time, basically, when we are doing our budget.
Mr. Baker?
Well, it sounds like I'm going to be the lone disagreement. We've got $1 million surplus, gentlemen and ma'am. We do not need to keep increasing taxes. This tax should not have been put on. We don't have to cut basic services. It's either or. We can refinance bonds. We haven't looked with a fine-tooth comb at all the expenses. I think it's time that we roll up our sleeves and take a look.
Can I just make a point, if I may? That surplus that we anticipated, keep in mind that's not due to the revenues. That's due to not filling 16 positions in the budget. So if you repeal the sales tax, there would be an additional cuts that you would have to make, and that $1 million surplus would no longer be valid.
Mr. Simpson?
Somebody needs to help me here. I thought this whole panacea of refinancing bonds disappeared already. It was already made clear to us that refinancing, we weren't going to be able to refinance our way out of this.
The bond consultant stood right here and said Mr. Baker was correct. That's me. He said he would have information at the next meeting. He's not come back. I would encourage all of us to plan a work session where he brings in all the bonds across the board and we all examine them for ourselves.
I think it's
Yes.
worth responding to that. He did say we could refinance our bonds, but it would not make up the $1.8 million that we would currently have to make up should you rescind the sales tax. There is room to refinance. He will be bringing back a report on that point. But remember, of all the debt structures that we have out there, only a small portion of which are for the general fund. Refinancing some of our other bonds will help, for example, our water fund. But you have to focus on the smaller percentage of bonds that are in our general fund and look to refinance those. The refinancing of those would not generate anywhere near the would not free up, if you will, $1.8 million.
And there's a number of bonds that cannot be refinanced because they already have been refinanced. Okay, because the municipal bond world, you only get a chance to refinance. So a number of them cannot be refinanced. I do want to make it clear that one of the things the financial consultant is looking at is refinancing those bonds that we can refinance as a possible revenue stream for our capital expenses.